Mr. Chairman, I make a motion for the Lancaster City Council Finance Committee to convene into executive session to consider issues related to the compensation of public employees pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G1. The executive session should include the following individuals: Lancaster City Council members and Council President Pro Tem Roberts.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to convene an executive session. Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
I didn't hear the mayor.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Kreitz, is the mayor included in that?
No. It's just council and Council Pro Tem.
We are in executive session.
Finance Committee to leave executive session and return to the regular scheduled meeting at this time.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to return to the regularly scheduled Finance Committee. Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
I'm a yes. We are back in Finance Committee meeting. First item we have on our agenda is Resolution 9323, a resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and to amend the certificate of appropriations with the county auditor in the Water Pollution Control Fund coming out of water wastewater. Mr. James.
Thank you, Chairman McDaniel. I'm going to invite the Superintendent Nixon to give us a little more information about this particular resolution.
Okay, I'll give you hopefully a quick update. This is a chemical line item. We use various chemicals in our treatment systems. We use a bioxide at the Upper Hocking pump station, and that's an oxidizer to help eliminate the hydrogen sulfide concentration in the wastewater as is pumped 4 miles from, or 2 miles, whatever, from the pump station up to the treatment plant. And we're using with the low flow, we're not getting as much dilution, so we're using more chemical, and the price has gone up significantly on that product. And if we don't add the product, we're going to have more corrosion in the screen room. It'll pretty much eat up the metal pretty quickly. And we tried to put as much stainless in there as possible, but it's even showing rust. So it's adding more money for the bioxide. We use sodium hypochlorite and sodium bisulfite at the Lawrence Street wastewater plant for disinfection. We add the sodium hypochlorite as basically a chlorine, it's a bleach, and then we have to remove the chlorine from the wastewater before it goes to the river, so we have to add sodium bisulfite to strip out the chlorine. Too much chlorine in the stream causes carcinogenic problems with the fish and the microinvertebrate. So we've been using a little bit more of that than we anticipated at Lawrence Street as we switched over from chlorine gas last year. We also use aluminum sulfate at both plants now. We just got our first load at Lawrence Street. The aluminum sulfate is used to reduce the phosphorus in the wastewater. Too much phosphorus in wastewater discharge causes algal blooms. If you've been up to Lake Erie in the last several years and you've seen the green water in Lake Erie, that's because of algal blooms, high phosphorus. So we have to add aluminum sulfate to reduce the phosphorus. And then we also are using chemicals to clean membranes, citric acid and sodium hypochlorite. So with all the additional use of chemicals and all the price increases, and I screwed up the budget at the beginning of the year. I budgeted $35,000 less than I did the year before. All those things, I'm anticipating about $170,000 to get through the rest of the year if we keep at our current rates. I asked for 180. Again, if we don't spend it, that money rolls back into the wastewater revenue fund. So it's not like we'll either use it for chemicals or it'll roll into the fund. We're not hoarding money for any other purpose. So I'd like to go 2 readings so we can get the money in the accounts by October so we can continue on, make sure we have the chemicals we need to get through the year.
Questions for Mr. Nixon? All right, Mr. James, what's your pleasure?
I'm going to ask Mr. Matlin to second that, and I would like to support the 2 readings.
9323, Mr. Matlin's the second, 2 readings. Next item on our agenda is Resolution 9423, a resolution to authorize the mayor to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission State Capital Improvement Program and to execute a contract as required. Coming out of Public Works, Mr. Schoonover.
Engineer isn't here, so OPWC, something that we kind of go back and forth with LDOT and then wastewater or the water department in terms of grant projects. So, Mr. Mayor, if you have anything you want to throw in there.
Yeah, OPWC is money that comes from the state, and there is a process every year, and the stormwater and the engineering department kind of cooperate back and forth. the project that we plan to do with this year's allocation, assuming that it's awarded, because it is grant process, is paving South Broad Street from the railroad tracks down to the Corp limit.
I think bigger too, the sidewalk part of it. So
Yes.
what was it, last year or 2 years ago, when we were having the crosswalk and the traffic light discussion all the time on Broad Street? Sidewalks to
Yeah,
get to
there
the
are some
school.
sidewalks planned as part of that paving project.
Yeah.
Questions for the mayor on this? So if we get approved, it will be a 2024 project.
Yes, yes.
That would be great. Any other questions? Mr. Schoonover, what's your pleasure?
3 readings with Mr. James as my second.
That's correct. 2 readings,
I have 3 on here.
whatever you want.
2 is fine, I mean, it's just a grant, it's a grant
Yeah, we're
application,
asking for
so.
money.
If we were into suspending on this council, I'd just suspend and say, let's do it, but we'll do 2.
All right. Mr. James, you'll be the second on this, 2 readings.
That's correct.
Next item we have is Resolution 9523, a resolution accepting the rates as determined by the Fairfield County Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them with the county auditor. This is coming out of finance. I'm the sponsor on this. This is pretty straightforward. Every year, the County Budget Commission reviews the various levies that are in place, and they then come to council for certification to set the budget going forward. Does the auditor or the mayor want to speak to this? I think we saw an increase in this, didn't we, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, there's an increase in it. This is just, like I said, an annual piece, like you said, that the county auditor or the budget commission then certifies their best estimate for the collections for 2024 on the 2023 tax year. So there seems to be an increase, which I'm assuming it's from the real estate appraisals going up.
Yeah, so the inside millage isn't adjusted for increases in value, so as market values go up, the inside millage would increase. So hopefully, I mean, it would make sense that it's an increase, and we don't know until we get the check how much it actually is.
Right. Any questions on this piece of legislation? Again, it's something that we're required to certify every year, and it does look like we might benefit this year from the increase.
Well, especially since our local government fund from the legislature went down this
Right,
year by
exactly.
about 5%.
Do we have a dollar figure what that is?
We had it, it's been a while since we got it.
I'll get that to you. I'll email it to everybody. And I have yet to check on the direct state match for the local government. That's usually also what they hit and take away from us, which they have done in the past, and then they gave it back. And it would not shock me if they don't start trickling that back and keeping that money is what the state. But
So-
I'll get that out to you, and then I'll look on the states for the state direct.
Great, thank you. Any other questions on this piece of legislation? Mrs. Kreitz, would you second that?
Yes, sir.
And we'll go 2 readings on that piece of legislation. Next item we have on the agenda is Resolution 9623, a resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and to amend the certificate of appropriations with the county auditor and the fire impact fund and declare an emergency. This is coming out of safety, Mr. Matlin.
Yes, so back in August, we passed an ordinance to negotiate to purchase a piece of land on the west side for a new firehouse. And we did not put a funding source on that legislation, and the mayor has been able to negotiate and for a purchase of that piece of land. And this is the funding source, taking money from the fire impact fee and buying that land. So the fire chief is here. Want to add anything to that, Steve?
Nope, I was going to give exactly the same explanation you just did.
There you
so
go.
I thought I'd stand here just in case you needed me.
And we appreciate it.
Thanks.
So since we have the chief at the podium, are there any questions for him? I'm just teasing, Chief. Mr. Matlin, what's your pleasure?
We're going to do 2 readings, and Mr. James is going to second for me.
That's correct.
2 readings with Mr. James as the second. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is Resolution 9723, a resolution to authorize the mayor to prepare and execute letters of intent to provide soft loans for low-income housing tax credit applications and to declare an emergency. This is coming out of finance. I'm going to ask Mayor Shuffler to discuss this.
Yeah, so back when we got the ARPA money, we set aside a significant amount for affordable housing. And now, and after a number of years of no developer being interested at all in building housing in Lancaster, we now have a good bit of interest, and especially for affordable housing. So there are two developers, Woda Cooper and LDG. Woda Cooper has actually purchased land. LDG has a contract on land and are doing their due diligence. They are both applying for the 9% LIHTC credit, and it's a point-based system, and those with the high enough points get awarded the 9% credit, which helps with the financing. And they have asked local support, which gives them extra points if they can show local support. They have asked, Woda Cooper asked for $200,000 and LDG asked for $250,000, which is, we have that much money in the fund set aside for affordable housing. The county has also indicated they will support the Woda Cooper plan for significantly more than they've asked us for. So this is to let them do their application, which is due in September. There's no guarantee that they will be awarded the credit, in which case the projects may not happen. So there'll be no transfer of money. So this is in hopes that we can bring something like 300 units of affordable housing to Lancaster sometime in the very near future.
Thank you. Questions for the mayor on this? So these are opportunities that we haven't had for some time to actually bring true affordable housing. And both of these projects look very promising. And this is a competitive program, so the more points they get on their application, the more opportunity they may have to get this particular program. If they don't receive this 9% LIHTC credit, we won't have the expenditure of funds. Is that correct?
It's my understanding, yes.
So it is a loan. It's called a soft loan, and it's over. Do we have a time period on what the proposal is?
I think the agreement says 20 years, but it's fairly typical that those loans never get paid back.
So you're funding the opportunity for people who need housing to have housing at significantly reduced rates, which we currently don't have enough of that in Lancaster, Ohio. So, any questions, Auditor Nettles?
And this is just more of a statement, where I sent to everybody in the fund number 2052, that's the local
Yes.
government, this is the state local fiscal recovery fund monies that we have to have expended by December 31st, 2026.
Yeah, very
So
good
these
point.
are monies that we have, cash we have on hand now to expend for affordable housing.
Yeah, that's a very good point. This is ARPA money we're talking about that's specifically set aside for this type of program. Mr. Ehlers, did you have a?
I do. I know the developer's not here, but do you know, like, what type of affordable housing are they talking? Are they talking straight affordable housing? Are they talking Section 8 housing? Do you know what type of affordable housing?
I guess I don't understand the difference between those two terms. I know the LDG will go down to 30% of area media income for the apartments. Woda Cooper, I think, goes down to 50% of AMI, which means it's a formula, but it is extremely cheap housing, and I'm not exactly sure what Section 8 housing is. I know that's a popular term when people are complaining about affordable housing. So can't answer your question.
Thank you.
Any
I
other
saw another
questions?
hand up over there.
I think my question was answered. These are both apartment units?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, isn't it like 200 plus on South Union Street and 100 in the neighborhood of 100 on
It was
Sells.
less than that on Sells Road, and something, I think the initial plan for South Ewing Street was 204, but they were working to rearrange the buildings on the land to see how many more they could get.
Any other?
The part of Sells
Sorry.
Road is just close to Main Street. Just want to save you some phone calls there. So,
It's south of Marietta, right?
yes. Right.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right, we're gonna, because of this, the deadline that both of these companies have to submit their request for funding, I'm gonna ask for suspension. Mrs. Kreitz, would you second that?
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any departmental updates? Fire Chief?
So I haven't done any department updates for a while, and I have some good news that one of the two medics units that we ordered not last year, 2021, arrived last Friday, and we expect the second one to show up next week. So we'll have the first one in service probably the end of this week. We're getting radios installed and getting some brackets put in for some of our equipment, but it should be on the road by the end of the week. And we also got delivery Friday, the same day as the medic. We've been looking for another Ford Explorer for a sort of a staff car. It's for fire prevention to replace one that was 2012 and not really in good shape at all. We finally found one of those and went and picked that up Friday as well. So things are starting to come together as far as our vehicle fleet, and this should save us a lot. Getting these two medics in service is going to save us a lot of maintenance, headaches, and money. So thank you all for your support and the legislation that you had passed clear back in 2021 to make these vehicles happen. And that's it for
Thanks,
me.
Chief.
Any questions? Sorry, I should get better at asking the first questions before I just walk away.
I see none.
Nope, okay.
Any other departmental updates?
Good evening. I missed this at the last council meeting, but I'd be remiss if I didn't remind everyone. The police department and fire department played in a basketball game a couple weeks ago, and we clearly beat them into a pulp. And we are definitely the superior public safety agency, so I have to put that out there. But I'm still recovering from injury, so. Anyway, just a couple updates. For your constituents that have children in the city schools, I think it's important to let everyone know, the public know. We are working together with Judge Vandervoort and several county administrators on a school threat assessment protocol, very similar to, we have a domestic violence protocol within the county that we follow, and what that does is bring everybody on the same sheet of music as far as how you handle a specific type of call. What we're finding nationwide with unfortunate dynamic incidents at school is a pretty bad lack of communication most of the time between law enforcement and identifying threats early. So we're putting a lot of work into that. Judge Vandervoort's putting the lion's share of work into that to come up with a protocol that will allow all law enforcement agencies in the county to react the same way when a threat is identified. And I don't mean the threat the day of. I'm talking about signs, typical listings, typical behaviors from students that exhibit that type of behavior prior to a dynamic event. So we are coming up with a policy and protocol to identify that, so we're all reacting the same way, we're all on the same sheet of music, and we're all getting those children through the correct resources that we can before something happens. So a lot of progress is being made on that, and I think that would be something important for the citizens to know. A personnel update, we have 4 in the conditional offer phase right now, which would potentially take us to 73. And I think, I'm confident that for the first time in a long time, we're actually going to have a waiting list at the Lancaster Police Department before the end of the year. And just hearing the interest that I know Chief McDaniel has reached out to me before about people reaching out to him to take our tests, and just hearing in our own messages and emails and phone lines, there's a lot of good candidates that want to try to get on, and I think that's a pretty exciting thing that we're going to actually have a waiting list for that by the end of the year. So hiring is going very well. The last thing that I can update on, and this is in the very infant stages, I discussed this at Council Safety Committee meeting this morning. We are working on a prototype to allow for citizens to be able to log on or go to a specific website to see what type of activity is going on in their neighborhood in real time. It essentially would be a public safety heat map. So for instance, the way that's handled now is typically people, you know, if you work for the police department or you have a connection, you're like, hey, what's going on? I saw 3 cars down the road, et cetera, et cetera. In an effort to allow that information to get out to the public quicker and more efficiently, we will have that information pushed to a site to where they can see what is going on without any identifying characteristics of the people involved. Obviously, want to protect that information. But it will be a real-time resource for people to know what's going on in their neighborhood, and I think that'll be very valuable. I would like to say, however, just like our online reporting system, we are going to slow roll that out because we want to make sure it works before we are advertising where to go and how to get to it. I don't want to have a broken system before we roll that out, but I do think it's important that the public knows that will exist. So if anybody,
So
yes,
this
Becky.
means that people don't have to refer to Facebook's Lancaster's in the know to see what's going on in the city.
While that's a quality resource for factual information,
So-
thorough
Just
objectivity,
like
yes,
throw
they will
that
have
out there.
another.
Oh, is it a gunshot? Oh, no, car
They will have
backfire.
another resource, yes.
Other questions for Chief Snyder?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any other departmental updates? Seeing none, I'll turn it over to President Porter for tonight's meeting prep.
Yes, we have TR 9223. It's the schedule of Council and Finance Committee meetings for 2024 out of the Law Committee. Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes, thank you, President Pro Tem Porter. This is the annual piece to schedule the meetings for the upcoming council year because the room fills up quickly, so they have to get it on the calendar as soon as possible to get it reserved.
Okay, thank you very much. And one other item of note, Clerk Sandy is retiring at the end of the year. We're going to ask individuals who may be interested in filling this position to submit an email to tsandy@cilancaster.oh.us and submit a letter of interest and qualifications by October 2nd of 2023. Okay, all right. It's once again, tsandy@ci.lancaster.oh.us. Did I get that right?
You did.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman McDaniel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Are there any other items for finance? Any other items for finance? I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. It is 7:05.
We'll begin the Lancaster City Council meeting at 7:10.
The Frankie Smith Funeral Home and Crematory in Lancaster and the Johnson Smith Funeral Home in Baltimore have a long and wonderful history of serving our community. Feel free to give us a call at 740-653-0652. Stop in and see us at either of our 2 locations, 405 North Columbus Street in Lancaster and 207 South Main Street in Baltimore. Respect for tradition, regard for change.
Hi, this is Kristen Glazier with Fairhope Hospice and Palliative Care. We're here to promote compassionate end-of-life care by providing comfort, support, and resources for those experiencing palliative needs in our community. This month, we are grateful to be chosen as a recipient of the Buckeye Cares program. That means Buckeye will make a generous donation with every vehicle they sell this month. We really couldn't accomplish what we do without local support. Thank you, Buckeye, for helping our community.
I would like to ask that everybody this evening, in lieu of prayer, observe a moment of silence on this, the 22nd anniversary of the September 11th attacks, to recognize those who sacrificed their lives, those who lost their lives, and also the unity that came to our country after that attack. We'll now call the Lancaster City Council September 11th meeting to order and ask that everybody join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. We'll now do the roll call.
Mr. Ehlers?
Here.
Mr. Ailes?
Here.
Mrs. Kreitz? Here. Mr. James?
Here.
Mr. Matlin?
Here.
Mr. McDaniel?
Here.
Mr. Porter?
Here.
Mr. Schoonover?
Here.
And Mrs. Teener?
Here.
Could I now have a motion to excuse President?
Mr. President, I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And we'll have reading and disposal of the journal.
I'd like to present the regular meeting minutes dated August 28th, 2023.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the journal.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, do we have any reports of city officials?
I have one email dated September the 11th, 2023 regarding the finance agenda submitted by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of city officials.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Do we have any special presentations? Oh, sorry. Do we have any communications?
There are two. An email dated August 31st, 2023 regarding the Fairfield County Adam H. Needs Assessment Survey submitted by Marcy Fields, Executive Director of the Fairfield County Adam H. Board, and a notice to the Legislative Authority for a new liquor license to Dolgen Midwest LLC, doing business as Dollar General, store number 24381, located at 580 South Broad Street. Bear with me one second here. Lancaster, Ohio, 43130, submitted by the Ohio Division of Liquor Control.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the communications.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, special presentations or awards. We do have some this evening and would ask Lindbergh Disser to come forward and do those presentations.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm the director of our Community Development Department, and this Wednesday, the United Way of Fairfield County kicks off their annual campaign with their Community Care Day. And in alignment with that, our department likes to recognize caring citizens in our community who do so much for Lancaster. So we have our Caring Citizen Awards. And first, I would like to recognize Chris Shire, have her come up. So Chris first came to Lancaster 27 years ago for the Lancaster Festival, and she loved it so much she stayed and has been a great contribution to our community ever since. She is the president of her advertising and marketing company called Madison and Fifth, and recently she created a community website called the Lancaster Herald. And if you haven't been to the website yet, I invite you to go to lancasterherald.com. It's a community website for the people, by the people, and it's open for community contributions. And I just wanted to recognize you, Chris, for all that you've done for Lancaster, especially with the Lancaster Herald, but other things as well that I could go on and on. So I'd like to present you with this Caring Citizen Award with our appreciation and in recognition of your outstanding contributions to your neighbors, your neighborhood, and our community. Thanks for everything you do. Next, I'd like to recognize Michael Johnson. Michael, if you'd like to come up, please. So Michael is a Lancaster native. And in his role as the marketing director for the Fairfield County Heritage Association and editor of the Heritage Quarterly, which if you do not currently receive the Heritage Quarterly, I highly recommend it. You will learn so much about Lancaster and Fairfield County. Michael is bringing our rich and diverse history to the present, including Lancaster's first African-American business owner, Scipio Smith. And we recently dedicated Walnut Street as Scipio Smith Way. And Michael is a member of the Sherman Rotary and the Lancaster Chamber of Commerce's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Belonging Committee. With me, I'm proud to serve on that committee together. And actually, Chris was on the task force when it was first started. And he was instrumental in Lancaster's first Juneteenth celebration, which was this past year. So Michael, with our appreciation and in recognition of your outstanding contributions to your neighbors, your neighborhood, and our community, thank you for everything you do for Lancaster. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to both of the award recipients this evening. Are there any petitions or memorials?
There are none to be presented.
At this time, we have set aside for voters and taxpayers. Are there any who wish to make a statement this evening? Hearing none, we'll move on. Are there any standing committee reports?
I have one, Finance Committee meeting minutes dated September the 11th, 2023, submitted by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of standing committees.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are there any reports of special committees?
There are none to be presented.
So there are no public hearings this evening, so we will move on to reading of resolutions. Temporary Resolution 8023.
A resolution to accept and approve Lancaster Fairfield Public Transit System Zero Tolerance Drug and Alcohol Testing Policy as approved by the Ohio Department of Transportation on July 21st, 2023, and to authorize updates to be made as needed by the director. Offered by Mr. Schoonover and seconded by Mr. James.
I was waiting for you to say my name. Sorry.
Oh, Mr. Schoonover, sorry. Councilmember Schoonover. There we go.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution, 8023.
I will second that motion.
Councilmember Schoonover, do you have any discussion?
No, just this is an update from ODOT in terms of their drug testing policy that public transit uses.
Okay, any other discussion? If none, please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary Resolution 8023 passes 9-0. We'll now move to Temporary Resolution 8123.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and amend the certificate of other sources and appropriations with the county auditor, increase receipts in the wastewater reserve fund 6029, and approve the issuance of a then and now certificate for payment of bills for Ohio Water Development Loan for the lateral D trunk sewer phase 2 Campground Road Pump Station, offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mr. Matlin.
Councilmember James.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Porter. This time I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon our written record temporary resolution number 81-23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilmember James, any discussion?
Yes, just as a brief reminder, this particular motion deals with about $15 million. Some of it has to do with the combined sewer of about $1.4 million. The other is direct payments that we need to make on some of the things that have already been actually performed for this part of the contract at about $13 million for a total of $15 million.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary Resolution 8123 passes 9-0. We'll now move to Temporary Resolution 8923.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and to amend the certificate of appropriations with the county auditor in the Water Pollution Control Fund 6004, offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mr. Matlin.
Councilmember James.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Porter. At this time, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the third reading of temporary resolution numbered 8923.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, once again, on a brief reminder from that particular situation, we have about 350,000 gallons of sludge that, at the Lawrence Street facility, that at this time of year, we're able to land apply some of it, but in the event that we can't, we'll need about $250,000 to finish up the year for dewatering some of that particular sludge. And keeping those sludge amounts down really assists in aiding the odor issue and helps keep that in check.
Okay. Any further discussion? So please call the roll on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
The motion to suspend passes 9-0. Now we'll move on to the reading of temporary resolution.
Sorry.
Okay. 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 So, Councilmember James.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Porter. At this time, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon a written record temporary resolution numbered 89-23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass and engross and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 8923. Any further discussion, Councilmember James?
Nothing more. Thank you.
Okay. Please, any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 89-23 passes 9-0. Temporary resolution 9023.
A resolution to increase and let's start again. A resolution to increase and decrease appropriations in the General Fund 1001 for the purchase of 4 Ford Interceptor police cruisers for use by the Lancaster Police Department and to declare an emergency. Offered by Mr. McDaniel and seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Councilmember McDaniel.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the third reading on resolution temporarily numbered 9023.
Second.
Any discussion, Councilmember McDaniel?
Yes, we discussed this at the last, actually probably couple of finance committee meetings regarding the difficulty acquiring police cruisers for the police department. Chief Snyder came and spoke with us about the opportunity to move that scheduling up, and he is going to utilize some money currently in his budget that will not be expended this year to allow them to purchase Ford Interceptors or order them. It might be next year before we actually get them, but by getting our order in sooner, the likelihood of getting them quicker and getting them on the street is a lot better. So this is an opportunity they have, and that's why I'm asking for suspension so they can move that process forward.
Any further discussion on the motion to suspend? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
The motion to suspend passes 9-0. Councilmember McDaniel.
Yes, Mr. President, I would like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 9023.
Second.
Any discussion?
Nothing further.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary Resolution 9023 passes 9-0. Temporary Resolution 9223.
A resolution to schedule Lancaster City Council meetings and Finance Committee meetings for 2024, offered by Mrs. Kreitz and seconded by Mrs. Teener.
Councilmember Kreitz.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem. This is a resolution to schedule the 2024 council meetings. It's the first of 3 readings.
Okay, first of 3 readings on Temporary Resolution 9223. Temporary Resolution 9323.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and to amend the certificate of appropriations with the county auditor in the Water Pollution Control Fund 6004, offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mr. Matlin.
Councilmember James.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Porter. This is the first of 2 readings.
Okay, Councilmember James indicates that this is the first of 2 readings on Temporary Resolution 9323. Temporary Resolution 9423.
A resolution to authorize the mayor to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission State Capital Improvement Program and to execute contracts as required, offered by Mr. Schoonover and seconded by Mr. James.
Councilmember Schoonover.
This will be the first of 2 readings.
Okay, Councilmember Schoonover indicates the first of 2 readings on Temporary Resolution 9423. Temporary Resolution 9523.
A resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Fairfield County Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor, offered by Mr. McDaniel and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Councilmember McDaniel.
First of 2 readings.
Councilmember McDaniel indicates the first of 2 readings on Temporary Resolution 9523. Temporary Resolution 9623.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and to amend the certificate of appropriations with the county auditor in the Fire Impact Fund 3022 and to declare an emergency, offered by Mr. Matlin and seconded by Mr. James.
Councilmember Matlin.
Yes, first of 2 readings.
Councilmember Matlin indicates the first of 2 readings on Temporary Resolution 9623. Temporary Resolution 9723.
A resolution to authorize the mayor to prepare and execute letters of intent to provide soft loans for low-income housing tax credit applications and to declare an emergency, offered by Mr. McDaniel and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Councilmember McDaniel.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of resolution temporarily numbered 9723.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to suspend rules for Temporary Resolution 9723. Any discussion, Councilmember McDaniel, excuse me.
Yeah, briefly, we discussed this in the Finance Committee meeting, but this, there's a deadline involved in submitting applications for the low-income housing tax credit. By authorizing the mayor to sign these letters, it allows the company to have local support and show that. It's part of the scoring process that will hopefully enhance their opportunity to achieve getting this approved and also bringing low-income housing to Lancaster, Ohio.
Any further discussion on the motion to suspend? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
No.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Abstain.
The motion to suspend passes 7.
7, 2, 1, and 1 abstention.
The motion to suspend passes 7-1 with 1 abstention. Councilmember McDaniel.
Yes, Mr. President, I would like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 9723.
Second?
Councilmember McDaniel, any further
Yes,
discussion?
some additional, we have money set aside in our ARPA funds, approximately $480,000. This money specifically designated for affordable housing for the city of Lancaster, Ohio. If we don't spend that money by 2026, it will go back to the federal government, and affordable housing probably won't be built in Lancaster, Ohio. This gives us an opportunity. There's no guarantee these companies will achieve this tax credit, but it puts them in a better position to get it. They're talking about building affordable housing for the people that can't currently afford to rent a house. And if they can, their entire income is going for their housing. I should say these particular applications are for apartments. We're talking about 204 additional apartments on South Ewing Street and approximately 100 apartments on Sells Road. I believe they're desperately needed. I believe this will make them more affordable, more attainable, and we can get people into homes that they can actually afford.
Any further discussion on the motion to pass? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
No.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Abstain.
Temporary resolution 9723 passes 7-1 with 1 abstention. Are there any other resolutions to come before council this evening? Hearing none, we'll move on to the reading of ordinances. Temporary ordinance 16, sorry, that's you.
No, you're right. You say 16.
1623.
An ordinance to amend permanent ordinance 13-23, repeal and replace existing permanent ordinance 13-23, offered by Mr. Ailes and seconded by Mr. Schoonover.
Councilmember Ailes.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that we pass and engross and enter upon the written record ordinance temporarily numbered 16-23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass temporary ordinance 1623. Councilmember Ailes.
Briefly, housing program coordinator is retiring and wants to go part-time till the end of the year. And then I'm assuming that we'll be bumping that back up to full-time next year, but that allows us to pay him part-time for the rest of the year.
Any further discussion on temporary ordinance 1623 and the motion to pass? Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 1623 passes 9-0. Are there any other ordinances to come before council this evening? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next order of business. Is there any old unfinished business that we need to discuss? Hearing none? Oh, sure, go ahead.
You always have to look this
Oh,
way.
sorry, I'll look that way. I'm in a learning curve.
You're doing a great job.
I was just asking, somebody, actually, we were just talking in general, and they asked about the pickleball courts. What's going on with that? I know that they couldn't find anybody to do the project, so what's going on with that?
So at the Parks Board meeting on Wednesday, there was a long discussion about the pickleball courts. The process to go out to bid will be started immediately. And there's also another possibility that we have discovered another cooperative purchasing group like Sourcewell that does state bids, but this one is for services and including possibly pavers. So you may be seeing a resolution in the near future at the next meeting to allow us to participate in that purchasing group, which might also help accelerate that. But at this point in the year, the pickleball courts hopefully will be up first project in the spring with whoever wins the bid or whoever we decide to go with to do the paving. So asphalt season is phasing down, and as long as it takes to go out for a bid, it's impossible to get those accomplished this year, but hopefully first thing next year.
Okay.
Could I add a comment? Just to let you know, the Parks right now is resurfacing the tennis courts at Rising Park, and a section of those are gonna also be lined for pickleball as well as tennis. So there have been temporary put in there by teams, but they're fulfilling that promise that they made to the public. I can't remember if it's 3 or 4, but they're gonna have them
I
permanently
noticed they're
lined.
over there playing at Rising
Yeah,
Park.
so they would only have to bring their nets, which is what they do. They could play 2 pickleball courts on each side of a tennis net, so we're gonna
Okay.
fulfill that promise we made.
I think it's 3 tennis courts will be 6 pickleball courts.
Any other unfinished business? I'm looking over at the side of the room before
I'm gonna bring a bell next time.
Bell would be helpful. Okay, so no more unfinished business. We'll move on to new business, and I believe the
Yes,
mayor-
I have new business. So in discussing with the park staff, their finances and capital projects going forward, in addition to the many deferred maintenance projects that they have in the works and need to address, there are 4 major capital improvement projects, including the pickleball courts, the Bowers Park ball fields, Sherman School upgrade for use, and certainly the footbridge at Martins Park. At this point, we now have completed the engineering for the footbridge at Martins Park. The engineer's estimate is $250,000. The new bridge will be at the same location as the old bridge. There was some discussion about moving it upstream, but it's been determined that they can put it back in the same location, but with new abutments will have to be constructed because there's question about whether the current abutments really are adequate. And then the bridge will be 4 feet wider than the existing bridge. If you've ever crossed that bridge, you know, if you ride your bike, it almost touches the handlebars on both sides. So with all the projects going on, and because the Martins Park Bridge is is used regularly by many segments of the population and not some of the targeted groups that pickleball courts and Bowers Park might be used for. And in order to get this project moved ahead, at the next meeting, we will be bringing legislation to pay for that out of the Capital Improvements Fund, so we can get it going. Hopefully, we're talking maybe as quickly as 6 months if we get the project moving pretty quickly. And the engineer's estimate, I think I said, was $250,000 for the new bridge. So you might expect that at the next meeting. Be happy to answer any questions, or we'll be working on that legislation going forward.
Are there any questions on that particular item? Hearing none, is there any additional new business? Hearing none, we will read the announcements of scheduled meetings.
Next meeting of Lancaster City Council is September 25th at 6:30 PM. The meeting following is October 9th at 6:30 PM, both meetings here in council chambers. Upcoming committee meetings for the next 30 days. Water Pollution, September 13th at 8:30 AM at the 1897 Conference Room. IT Telecom, September 15th at 8 AM at the 1897 Conference Room. Finance, September 25th at 6 PM here in council chambers. Code Enforcement, September 27th at 7:30 AM at the 1897 Conference Room. Finance, October 9th at 6 PM here in council chambers. And finally, Water Pollution, October the 11th at 8:30 AM at the 1897 Conference Room.
Do we have any bills?
There is one bill payable to MNCO in the amount of $74.91.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we pay the bill.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pay the bill. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We have no need for an executive session. I would take a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, I'd like to make that motion that we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. And if I could remind council members, please sign your legislation before you leave.
This year, the estimated